We're holding a Masechet Shabbat Babli Tet Vav Amud Aleph. We are 4 lines down on the Hebrew side. In the English, 15A1 in the Articles edition. Second, on the right column, the start of the new paragraph, Gufa. Okay, so Gufa always means that something was stated earlier. And in an earlier statement, we had Omar Rav Huna Beshlosho Mekomot Nechleku Shamai Behilel. Right? So this whole Gemara is really the Shmona Esrei Dvarim, the 18 Gezerot, the Bet Shammai pass or Bet Hillel. And dealing with one of those Gezerot, we mentioned a statement from Huna that said that when it actually came to Shammai and Hillel, not Bet Shammai Bet Hillel, but Shammai and Hillel only had 3 machloket. Although Bet Shammai Bet Hillel had over 300, they only had 3, Shammai and Hillel themselves. So the Gemara today is going to want to bring down what are the 3 cases that the machloket between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel exists. Interestingly, in all these 3 machlokets, the halacha is neither like Hillel or Shammai. The halacha is like the Chachamim. So we're going to start off the first case. Shammai Omer. This is dealing now with the case of Hafrashat Hala, taking off Chala. Okay? So there is a mitzvah that the Torah says that when you come into the land, right, and you're going to eat, and you're going to eat from your bread. So Mireshet Arisot Hashem, from the start of your breads, the beginning of your breads, the doughs, you're going to give it l'tiruma, right, to Hashem, to the Kohen, you're going to give tiruma, right? That's why the spread in the bracha is lahafresh chala tiruma. The Ashkenazi either say lahafresh chala or they say lahafresh chala min ha'isa, right, taking dough from the bread. However, our minhag is to say lahafresh chala tiruma. Okay, so now the question is, the Torah just says to give challah. It doesn't say for how much flour are you mechuyev to give flour. Is it any amount that I make a dough? Or is it a certain amount? How much challah to give? Okay, a challah, by the way, the word challah in the Torah means the portion that you give to the kohen. The bread that it's eating, it should not be challah, because if it's challah, you cannot eat it. It belongs to the kohen. However, over time, people call the bread that they eat challah. They don't actually mean challah, because challah would not be allowed for us to eat. The dough, the bread that we're eating, but not the challah. Challah has to go to the kohen, and nowadays it is burnt. So Shammai Omer, the measurement is mikav challah, from 1 kav of challah. Okay, whatever the measurement of kav is, if the flour is 1 kav, you have to take off challah. The Hillel Omer, and Hillel says not from 1 kav, but mikabayim, but rather from 2 kavim, if there's 2 kavim. The Chachamim Oimrim loich kedivrei zeh beloich kedivrei zeh, not like this one and not like that one. Ela kav umechatzam chayev bechalam. It has to be 1.5 kav. 1.5 kav. Okay, so the real question is, where are they getting everything from? Where are they getting this halacha? 1 kav, 2 kavim, 1.5 kav. So this is the way that the Gemara in Eruvin explains that when it says mereshit arisotachem, from the start of your doughs, we realize that arisotachem means your doughs, like the portion of food you get from the manna, from the man. And how much did we get from the man? We got an omer. Everybody got an omer of man. How much is an omer? Says the pasuk, asirit ha'efa. It was 1/10 of an ephah. Okay? So now if you take a look at the art scroll, he does a beautiful job for you. He explains. You take a look at 15a2. He gives you the measurements of an ephah. So an ephah, 1 ephah is 3 sa'ah. 3 sa'ah is 18 kav. 18 kav is 72 log or rova, and equals 432 betzah. 432 eggs. So one ephah is 432 eggs. And a tenth of 432, take 10% of 432, is going to get you to 43.2. And that is the halacha that's brought down in the Shulchan Aruch. So I'll read to you what it says in the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch, this is it's found in this is okay. This is Shulchan Aruch, Yeridea 324. So the first sif in the siman. Siman Shuf Shin Chav Dalet Sif Aleph. Ein Chiyuv v'Chala Ele Chamishis Minei Tivua. Okay, first Shulchan Aruch says you're not chayiv in challah unless you're making it from the 5 grains, right? It has to be a dough from the 5 grains. Ve'en chayav ela hamishet rovim. You need 5 rovim. 5 rovim. In fact, if you just continue the Gemara for 1 second, the Gemara then says, Mishehegdilu hamidot, when the units were increased, we're going to talk about that in a second. Amra chameshet rovim kemach chayivin b'chala. You need 5 rovim. Okay? Yossi omer, hamisha poturin, hamisha be'od hayavin. Not 5 exactly, but 5 plus is chayav in halal. So that's Shulchan Aruch says. Ve'en chayav ela hameshet rovim. Mida shemechazik mem gimel betzim ve'homesh betza. That's a measurement that holds 43 and a fifth. So 43, a fifth is 0.2, 43.2. So 432 eggs, 10%, asir taifa is 43.2. And the oto kemach ishir chala. And that is now the shear that one is chayiv to give chala. Okay? Now, what makes stuff more interesting is that the Ramah, he comes and says, I'll tell you the measurement of the container that you'll know if that container fills up, that you're going to be chayiv in chala. And he says it's 311.11 cubic etzbaot, cubic thumbs. And that is the one that is hayav in halal. Now, what happens is, throughout history, there were great tzaddikim who measured it. The Tzalach, for example, measures it, and he sees that the 43.2 eggs and the measurement that the Ramah gave is not equal. So which one is right, or which one changed? Do we say the eggs changed? Do we say the fingers changed? And that's why they're no longer equal? And it leads to many questions of how we relate this to today. How many pounds of flour is mechuyev, the person who's making the bread, to be mechuyev in halal? So there are, based on this number, there's a big sugya here. There's a lot to learn, how the measurements, what the questions are, and what's what and what's what. I'm not going to go through all this. I'm just going to tell you halacha l'maaseh. So there are different ways to measure the measurements. Turns out that according to the most lenient opinion, or the most machmar opinion, actually, the most smallest amount of flour, we're talking all of this about white flour, white regular flour, is 2.5 pounds. So everybody, Shem Svarim, hold that once you hit 2.5 pounds of flour, a person has to take off halal, but without a beracha. Without a beracha. Chavovadia, he says it's 1.56 kilograms, which I think I misspoke yesterday. I said it's 3.2, but it's actually 3.43 pounds. Rav Avram Chaim Na'eh was a big person in measurements. He said it was 3.1. The Igrot Moshe said it's 4.7 pounds. And the Hazon Ish said 5.4. So, halacha l'maaseh here, for Sfaradim everywhere, we say 3.5. Okay? Even though Rav Amar Chaim Noah, which is all the most inspired to take his measurements. So interesting if you want to read up about Rav Chaim Noah. He was actually a rabbi by the Bukharians, both in I think it was in Bukhara itself. If not Bukhara, it was Samarkand. I don't remember exactly where it was. Uzbekistan. He came there to do some shlichus, and he ended up being a rabbi there. And then when he came back to Eretz Yisrael, he became the Rav for the Bukharians in Shchunat Bukhara. And he has a very famous svarim on the shiurim b'Torah, in the shiurim of what's the measurements that the Torah mentions. And he, the Sfaradim, Chamabadia, followed him very much. And so we hold, even though he said 3.1, I guess, the way he calculated, so Chamabadia said 3.43. It's pretty much the same. So what we tell people, 3.5. 3.5, that's when you mechuyav in a chala with a beracha. Okay? The Igrat Moshe says 4.7. So Ashkenazim here in America, they wait to 5. When they get to 5 pounds, they use 5 pounds of flour, then they make the bracha on the challah. Chazon Ish said 5.4, but even Chazon Ish, they're saying, reportedly said, even though my shiurim are bigger, if Minhag and Klai Yisrael is to make a bracha at 5, they should make a bracha at 5. They shouldn't wait for 5.4. So again, by 2.5 pounds of white flour, it's already mechuyav in challah without a beracha. 3.5 with a beracha for Sfaradim, Ashkenazim at 5. And this is all about white flour. When it comes to whole wheat, because the measurement, the density of the whole wheat, right, and the volume it takes up can be different. And therefore, Rav Chaim Noah holds that whole wheat is 2.9, rye flour is 2.5, oat flour is 2.3, oatmeal is 2.0. So it all depends on what flour you're using and how much you would be of using it in order to be mechuyav in halal. So that's just the halacha l'maaseh portion. Now we're going to deal with the Gemara. You had a question? No. Okay. Fine. So now we have to explain what is going on over here. So we explain the Chachamim. Okay? We explain the Chachamim. They're saying Asarit ha'efa. I know efa is 1, and the Beitzah equals efa 432. So 10% is 43.2, and that's the halacha, 43.2. Exactly what is 43.2 eggs? That is up to debate, right? Depending on how you calculate what is what. So nowadays, that's the question. But we know for sure it's 43.2. So that is the Chachamim. That's the halacha l'maaseh. That's what 5 rova is. Now we have to deal with Shammai and Hillel. Where did they get their numbers from? So take a look at that chart that the article had in 1582. It says 1 ephah is 18 kav. Now, there is something called chomish milivar and something called chomish miligav. When you say a fifth or a tenth, is it exactly a tenth? Or do you add some of it when you're making it a fraction? And according to Shammai v'Hillel, you're adding, it's chomish milivar. You're adding to the fraction when you're saying a fraction. So as such, it goes up to 20. Take a look at the Tosafot. Shammai Omer, Mikad Chala, Hillel Omer, Mikabayim. This can also be found in note 10 on the English side, but I'll read it from the Tosafos. Where Shammai Mifarish, Tam the Shammai Hillel, Meshum the Efa Yuchet Kavim. When Efa we know is 18 Kavim. The Asirit Milivar, Hainu, Bet Kavim. And when you're doing a Chomish, you add Milivar, you add to it. And you add to it Bet Kavim. Uvoto Shior, Tzarich Lafish Chala. And from that 20 Kavim, you have to give a tenth. So what? A tenth of 20? 2, right? L'hafish Chala, Lehilel. So now you have to give Bet Kavim, Uvoto Shior, Tzarich Lafish Chala, Lehilel. Now, Shammai says the same thing. However, Shammai Savar, the Tzarik Bet Chalot L'Omer. When they got the Omer of the mun, the amount of mun, right, that they got it, and they made two breads from it. שעושים ממנו בית אכילות, אחת בבוקר ואחת בערב. בשיעור אכילה אחת, חשיב שמיים, עשיית איסס מדבר. Says Shammai that one bread, right? So they would make there would be 2 kavim, you're right, but they would make it in half and half. Each one was now a kav, and since each one was a kav, you're chayav from challah from the 1 kav. one last point to deal with over here. You saw where it says in the Gemara, "Mihishigdilo hamidot," when the measurements got bigger. So it's important to note that that actually happened over two stages. There is something called the midah hamidbarot, the measurements of when they were in the midbar. That's the original biblical measurements. And then there was something called midot Yerushalmiot, the measurements of Jerusalem. When they were in Jerusalem, they changed what a kav is, what a sa'ah is, what a log is. They kept the same name and they kept the same ratio from one to the other, but they changed the amount of the kav. Okay, and that happened. That happened in what's it called? From the Midbar till they got to Yerushalayim, and then again from Yerushalayim to when they were in Tzipori. When they went to Tzipori, again they made Midot Tziporiot. They converted it again. Each one, so the Midbar, whatever was a kav became less than a kav, and whatever was a kav in the Yerushalmiot became less than a kav in the Tzipori measurements. Each one got a little bigger, and the name stayed the same. Now, how is this explained? Because Chachamim said it was a kav and a half, but it's really one ephah is it's 1.5, right, kav, not 1.8, right? And we're saying it's 18 kav to an ephah, and Asirit will be 1.8, but we're saying it's 15 kav. So that is because of these measurement changes. It depends on what you're talking about. In midot midbarot, or you're talking about in midot Yerushalmiot. Thus, the required amount of challah and omer remained constant. The omer, which was at 7.5 lugin, the smaller rulers became 6 lugin. When the Sage Mishnah speak of a kav and a half, 6 lugin, they were referring to Jerusalem units. Okay, so the 18 is the midbariot units. Okay, and then it became 15 units in the Jerusalem units, because the 18 would become smaller, it became the 15. So that's why that is off. But that's important to know. So we talk about biblical measurements versus Jerusalem period measurements versus measurements after the second bayit, which is the Tzipori measurements. That is a little bit of the change. That's why the numbers might change, but in the end of the day, the amount is the same. Same amount of challah, same amount of, that was just what you're calling it and how much you're calling it by now. Right? Because I can take anything and say this is 5, and then I can say no, this is 10, this is 20, right? So that changed, but the actual measurement did not. Actual weight did not. Okay, that's on the halacha of challah, and that was the machoket Shammai v'Hillel. Now we have to find another case. Me'idach, Hillel omer melohin ma'im she'uvim poslim et hamikveh. Okay. So, something to know about mikvaot. When it comes to a mikvah, you need to have 40 sa'ah of water to be a kosher mikvah. That might be like that's a lot of it's a lot of water. Okay, so at the end of the day, if you add non-mikvah water, right? The mikvah water is natural rainwater or natural spring, something like that. But you take ma'im she'ovim, ma'im that was drawn, so it's in a bucket, you draw it, it's not kosher for mikvah. And you go and you throw it into a kosher mikvah, the mikvah stays kosher. Okay? In fact, many mikvahot that you go to, almost, I think every mikvah, is using this principle. It uses hashaka. Hashaka, which is not important for today's sugya, just want to let you know. So there's one bore, one pit of water that has the actual mikvah water. Then they have some sort of kosher pipe that connects it to another bar, another pit of water, and it touches the kosher mikvah water. When that happens, the second bore also becomes a kosher mikvah. And that's usually where we go. into that second bar. And that's how they're able to filter it and keep it clean and all the other things, because it's not the actual bar of the pit of mikvah water. But let's say the guy doesn't yet have a kosher mikvah. He has 39 of water in there. And then he goes and he wants to add, some more water in order to get to the right amount. That whole water becomes pasul. If it's a kosher mikvah, you add it stays kosher. If it's less than a kosher mikvah, and then you add the water, the whole mikvah becomes pasul. Even if you put now kosher and water for the mikvah, it still remains pasul. So the question is, how much water that you add to a non-kosher mikvah will pasul all the waters? So Hillel says, Melohin, you need to put a hin of mayim she'uvim. A hin is a biblical measure, the equivalent of 12 lugin or 3 kabin. Okay? And you put 12 lugin or 3 kabim, or that's one hin. That's a significant number. A lot of the Torah measurements are in hin. Okay? And that's what Hillel said. Now, why did he use the word hin? Hin already wasn't used in Talmudical times. But he used it because his rabbi taught it that way. He taught it that way too. Shammai Omer, Shammai says, no, just tish'a kabin. Just that's actually more, because one hin is 3 kabin. Shammai says, nah, 3 times that. So 3 hin, he's saying 9 kabin. That's a lot of water. Tish'a kabin is like when you go to mikvah. The minimum amount necessary for a person. Where is this? 1 second. 9 kabin, 15. He says, Shammai, only 9 kabin is regarded significant because it's the minimum amount that can normally be used for bathing. Okay? Since that's a significant number, we say Tfilat Ezra happens with 9 kabin, right? So that's why he used that number that could be posel the mikvah if it's not yet 40 sa'ah. Allah is not like this one, not like that one. Right. And so what is the amount? They said, we didn't know. 2 weavers came from the dung gate of Jerusalem, the garbage gate of Jerusalem. And they testified in the name of Shammai v'Avtalion. They said, 3 lugin. 3 lugin. Okay? Which is a lot less, because a hin is 12 lugin. So we're talking about a quarter of that, a very small amount. I think on Shabbat, someone said it's about a liter or so of water. That they would add that to the mikvah not yet kosher, and it would ruin the whole thing. And the rabbis gave the halacha like that. And that's the way that Rambam brings down the halacha. Rambam brings down the halacha that if I have a mikvah, right, mikvah that doesn't yet have 40 sa'ah of water, and 3 log of drawn water that falls into a ritual bath that has less than 40 sa'ah, disqualifies the ritual bath as per the testimony of the 2 weavers. Right? That's the Rambam brings down Hilchot Mikvaot, Shulchan Aruch Yoredea 201:15 also brings down that halacha. Again, 3 lugin. If you want, you can check really quick. Let me see. 3 lugin, how much that is around. So according to ChatGPT, okay, 1 log equals 6.6 liters, and that's what we saw also yesterday. We saw this in the art school. He brought it down like that as well. 0.6 liters. So 3 lugin is It's wait. One log, that's according to the Chazon Ish, it's 0.6. So 3 lugin is 1.8. According to Rav Chaim Avram Na'ah, says the ChatGPT, that one log is 0.345 liters. So Shash is 1 liter. So 1 liter into 39 sa'ah, and we can give you what 39 sa'ah is. Convert to liters, gallons. Let's see. So he says over here, let's see. Not saying anything. Okay, let's see. We'll give it a time to come out, and then we'll say it if he brings it. But anyway, so a very small amount of water, halacha, about 1 liter, a little bit more than 1 liter, can make the whole mikvah pasul. So 1 se'ah is 24.8 liters according to Avram Chaim Na'ah, and that's about 24.8 liters. So 39 sa'ah is 970 liters, which is about 256 gallons. Okay, 256 gallons. So the guy had, this is 39 sa'ah. The guy had 256 gallons, which is 970 liters. So he doesn't yet have a kosher mikvah. Okay, he's just shy of it. And then you put in 1 liter of non-kosher water, right? The whole mikvah is pasul. If you start all over again, you cannot just put now another sa'ah of water and you're good. No, it's gone, right? According to the Chazon Ish, 1 sa'ah is 43.2 liters. So 39 sa'ah is 1684, which is about 400. So 39 sa'ah is 445 gallons. Okay, so right, and so he brings over here in the Steinsaltz, he says, right, 1 log is about 240 to 480 mils. Right, so everything is right. Okay, so there you have the practicality of that halacha and how big that is. So someone actually said he saw that they were building a mikvah in Great Neck, that the Rav that was involved with building the mikvah, when they got the bore ready, the pit ready to collect the rainwaters, he went with a towel and he was wiping down all the walls. He didn't understand why. He says, now I understand why, because if all the walls were damp, right, and then you add the water, right, it's not going to be kosher because you had non-kosher water added when there wasn't enough mikvah water. So, he wanted to make sure it was all dry, and this way when the water came in, the whole water is just the rainwater. It's not mixed with non-kosher water because you can get a liter of water easily on the walls, the damp walls of the bar. Okay, very good. So that is on that. Right, there's something in the chat. I didn't see it. 1 second. How do I see the chat? Oh, you gave this thumbs up. Okay, very good. All right. So now let's get to the next case. The idach. And the next case. Shammai Omer, Kol Anashim, Dayan Sha'atan. All right. What are we dealing with here? The next machloket, Shammai Hillel. It deals with Isha Nida, Isha Zava. It deals with as follows. Especially in the olden days, when the times of the Talmud, when they ate Tiruma, Betahara, they ate Chulin, Betahara, they ate everything Betahara, and they were very careful with Tuma, Betahara. They didn't sit on something the Nida sat on and stuff like that. So it was important that we knew exactly when she became a Nida. The question was as follows. Now, they would check often. Every time she wanted to eat something with Tahara, she would check. So she checked yesterday. Okay? She woke up this morning, she did some stuff, and now she sees she's a Nida. So the question is, when do we calculate that she became Tameh? Do we say from the moment right now that we see her, that she has it, now she's Tameh, everything else she touched and did was Tahor? Or do we say, no, the last known Tahor was the last time she checked? From that point, I don't know anymore. And everything is Tameh, Limafreya. How do we look at it? So Shammai says, listen, whatever you have right now, that's what she's Tameh. Which is basically, if she has a flow, it's happening right away and you're seeing it. But Hillel Omer, no, Pkida lepkida. Says Hillel, again, Hillel's being machmir here. He says, no, we only know from the last examination. And even if it's many days in advance, she last checked on Sunday. It is now Friday. Everything from Friday to the past Sunday is all going to be tameh, because the last time we know that she was tahor was on Sunday. What's his reasoning? So the first to explain is that he says sometimes the flow happens and you don't see it right away. It stays in the walls of the womb, stays in the walls of the vagina. It doesn't come out. So, therefore, when you see it later, it's already happened earlier. Everything earlier is tameh. Say no, not this way, not that way. So Chaim say, no. It's two things. Number one, we never say that the blood gets stuck or doesn't come out for more than 24 hours. Okay? So there's the max. The max, you go back to saying that she's tameh, is 24 hours. And if she did a tahara within those 24 hours, then we go back to the time that she checked last. It's either whichever one is shorter, the last check or 24 hours. Whichever one is shorter, that's the one that you hold up. Says the Rambam in Sefer Tahara, a woman who does not have a fixed period, and this is all about a woman who does not have a fixed period. Vest Kavua. A woman who does not have a fixed period and saw blood, but did not feel begin to flow, is impure only 24 hours retroactively. If she examined herself within this period, she's retroactively impure from the time of that examination, as per the opinion of the rabbis. So here you have the three cases. You want to ask anyone a trivia question? Tell me the three cases that were the only machlokets between Shammai and Hillel. And you can ask them if they know these cases. The cases of the halak, the cases of the mikveh, and the case of when the Ishanida becomes tameh. And then you can tell who's the halacha like, Shammai or Hillel. The answer is like neither of them. Halacha is like the Rabbanan in all those three cases. Okay, now you said there were three cases, and we gave the three cases. Gemara wants to know, is this really true? Mesuleka, and there's no other case? There's no other case that Shammai and Hillel were arguing, Vayika. But surely there is. Hillel Omer Lismoich, Veshamai Omer Shiloi Lismoich. Go back to Masechus Chagiga. Remember, we're looking at Chagiga. The question was, should we lean on the animal when we're bringing up the carbonot, on Yom Tov itself? That had to be brought up, and it needs smicha, leaning. Do we do it or not? Shammai's like, no, because it's like riding an animal. Hillel's like, yes, it's part of what you need to do for Yom Tov, right? And it's for achila, it's okay, or whatever. So we remember we went through that whole sugya. So there is machloket Shammai v'Hillel. But ki Amar Rav Huna heicha deleka pelukta derabata behadayu. If you remember that Gemara in Chagiga, you remembered that machloket did not start with Shammai v'Hillel. Already, hundreds of years beforehand, there was a machloket of the first zugot, Yossi ben Yoezer, Yossi ben Yohanan. There already was machloket there regarding the smicha or no smicha. So that was already an earlier machloket. We're talking about exclusive machlokets of Shammai and Hillel. But there is another case. Habotzer lagat. Shammai omer huchshar, Hillel omer lo huchshar. There's another machloket that we know about. The grapes. Okay, now the food in general does not become tameh until it's huchshar, which means it's prepared. How does it get prepared? It has to have liquid to have gone on it. Once the liquid has gone on it, it can become now tameh. The liquid has to also be intended to have gone on it, and the person has to be pleased with that liquid. Okay, so we spoke about this many times in the past. So here's the question as follows. The guy wants to make wine. He's putting the grapes in a container. It's a waterproof, it's a good container. And the grapes are oozing. Now, grape juice liquid, right, is one of the 7 liquids that make tameh. It could prepare it to be mikabel tuma. So besides Bet Shammai, the liquid is coming out on the grapes. Then the grapes are all huchshar and mikabel tuma, because the liquid is there. And Hillel says, no, he's not pleased with that liquid. So it's a machloket. Shammai Hillel, huchshar and no huchshar. Gemara says, Bar minedahi. No, that case is excluded, not counted. Why? Tatam kashatikle Hillel l'shamay. One Shammai explained his opinion and said because the guy can use that liquid for the grape juice, for the wine, so he does like it. You can't say he doesn't like it. He does like it because he can use it for the grape juice and the wine. So therefore, it does become hokshar latoma. And when Hillel heard the reasoning, Hillel kept quiet and agreed to Shammai's din. So therefore, it's not a machloket that lasted. It was a machloket, but then he explained and he accepted the other psak. Okay, so that is on the three cases of machloket of Shammai v'Hillel. In the case of smoke is not counted because it's an earlier machloket, and the case of the botel and gat is not counted because eventually Hillel agreed to Shammai. Okie dokie. Now we had earlier. We said we brought a brayta that said Yossi ben Yoezer ish Tzereda veYossi ben Yohanan ish Yerushalayim gazul tuma al eretz ha'amim va'al kile zuchuchit. They were gozer tuma on the lands of the nations, and they were gozer tuma on glassware. Right? Their concern with the tuma of the lands of the nations was that they don't bury their dead properly, and even though it's a Gaish body, still the stepping on it or touching it can make tuma for the person. So they consider, and they're not careful with burying their deads correctly, and things like this can happen. So therefore, they said the chutz la'aretz, everything outside of Eretz Yisrael is tameh, the land. And they also said that glassware is tameh, not mentioned in the Torah, but they gave it rabbinic tuma. Now, Yossi ben Yoezer and Yossi ben Yohanan, they lived approximately more than 200 years before the destruction. We're now going to have a braita that says this gezerah was issued during 80 years before the destruction, which was the time of Hillel and Shammai. So the Gemara's question is, how can you tell me Yossi ben Yoezer and Yossi ben Yohanan were the ones who made this gezerah? But we're going to see that it happened way after their time. Okay, so let's start. These are the rabbis that lived 80 years before the destruction, during the time of Hillel and Shammai. Kahana says, Rabbi Yossi fell ill. They sent him a message. Rabbi Emor Lanu Shnayim Shlosh Dvarim Shamarta Lanu Mishum Avicha. Tell us some stuff that you said in the name of your father. Who was his father? Yossi ben Chalafta. Yossi ben Chalafta is the famous author of the Braita known as Seder Olam, the history, a historical piece on the Jewish people. So they're asking him to say stuff over from his father from Seder Olam. So Kach Amar Abba Shlach Lahem. He said back to them, Kach Amar, this is what my father said. 180 years before the destruction of the temple, the Romans came and conquered Eretz Yisrael, started conquering Eretz Yisrael, the wicked empire. This is during the times of Yehoshua ben Farhaya and the time of Arabel. This was during the second pair of Zugot, Nasi and Abetin, that were there. It was about 180 years before the destruction. Shmonim Shana at Shloch HaRabayit, 80 years before the destruction of the Bayit, Gazru Tum'a al Eretz Ha'amim. They were gozer Tum'a on the Goyish lands, Ba'al Kilei Zichut, and on glassware. Arba'im Shana at Shloch, so Arba'im Shana at Shloch Harav Habayit, Galatat La Sanhedrin. 40 years before the destruction, the Sanhedrin left the Lishkat HaGazit, and they went to Vayashvala B'Haniyot, and they went to a place called Haniyot. It's a building on the Temple Mount known as Haniyot. They left their seat in the Lishkat HaGazit. So a couple of things. First of all, the Gemara in Yom says 40 years beforehand, a lot of the miracles stopped in the second Beit HaMikdash. No longer was the goat for Yom Kippur for Hashem in the right hand, and the lottery happened. No longer the string went from red to white. All that happened 40 years before the destruction, and that was the time also that the sanctuary doors just kept open on their own. They couldn't close it, just kept opening easily, indicating that the enemy will come easily through the doors. And that was the time that Rav Tzadok started his 40-year fast, so the temple should not be destroyed. All that was at 40 years. So now, why are you telling me that Sanhedrin moved out? Lamai hilchata. What's the halacha for? They didn't judge anymore the punishments, the knas. Okay, I think Gemara says, really? Did knas you think they didn't punish knasot? The only thing you need for knas to charge someone a fine is that you have smicha meish Moshe Rabbeinu, smicha directly from Moshe Rabbeinu in line that never got broken. That's smicha, and during that time they still had that. So why would they stop dini knasot? Ela ema shalodanu dini nefashot. They did not any longer judge capital cases. Okay, the capital cases, number one, did not have to be judged by a Sanhedrin Gedolah. However, in order for them to judge, because any 23 members Sanhedrin Katana could judge a capital case, however, but in order to judge it, the Sanhedrin Gedolah has to be in its place. When it comes to the Zaken Mamre, the rabbi who goes against the Sanhedrin, it says there, you should rise and go up to that place that your Shem had chose. Shows that in order to take care of capital punishment, you have to go to that place. The Sanhedrin has to exist in the Lishkat HaGazit. If the Sanhedrin does not live in the Lishkat HaGazit, then no more can you do capital punishments. More Sanhedrin, more Tosfos Zara. Okay. Now, why did they leave? For the Gemara in Daf 8 says, 40 years before the destruction of the temple, lawlessness had become rife, and the courts realized there were too many murderers for them to prosecute. Faced with the situation of not being able to enforce the law, Sanhedrin said it's better that we should move away and not be duty bound to try them. So it was just so bad that they couldn't anymore do the cases. So 40 years before, they stepped down. However, what did we see? That the gezerah for the tumah of the chutzlars and the glassware, b'shmonim shana, happened in 80 years. And if you're going to say, yeah, Yossi ben Yoezer and Yossi ben Yochanan are from 80 years before destruction, but we learned, Hillel, V'Shimon, V'Gamil, V'Shimu, Nahagu, Nisi'otan, Lifnei Habayit, Me'ah Shana, Yossi ben Yoezer, Ish Sereda, Yossi ben Yochanan, Havu Katme, Tuma. They were long before that. Okay? It's about 100 and something years before that was when Yossi ben Yoezer and Yossi ben Yochanan lived. Sahavu kadmei tuma. They were long before that. So how could you say that? So who made the gezerah of the lands of Chutz La'aretz and the glassware? Who made that gezerah? Atu inhu. So rather, it happened in stages. Rabbi Yossi's, they came and gazru agusha lisrof. Then, if the truma touched the land of the goyim, you have to burn the tiruma now, right? Because it's tameh, you have to burn it. Avira velo kilum. But if it's only over the airspace, it didn't touch the actual ground, so then nothing. In the 80 years before destruction, rabbis came and gazru avira litlot, and they said no. When it comes to the one that was suspended over the chutz la'aretz, but didn't actually touch the land, you cannot burn it and you cannot eat it. You have to let it, just get ruined, and then you get rid of it. The Memra, the Hadag is sefa. Are you telling me that the original Yossi ben Yoezer, Yossi ben Yochanan, when they made the gezerah, they said you have to burn the tilma if it touched the earth of the goyim? V'ha'amar ilfa, but Ilfa said, Yadayim tichilan gezeritan l'sefa. The only gezerah that was initially when it made for truma that you have to burn it, the Rabban and Tuma, is the hands. Stam yadayim shenayim, right? And if it touches truma, now you have to burn it. That was the only one, said Ilfa, right? Yadayim was tichilan gezeritan l'sefa. Hamidei achina lo. So it cannot be Yossi ben Yoezer, Yossi ben Yochanan made the gezerah that you have to burn it. Ela, this is how it happened. Ati inhu. Yoshis came and said, Gazur agusha litlot. They said that if it touches the ground of the goyim, you cannot eat it. You have to let it get ruined by itself. Yeah, va'avira. But if it just suspended over the land, like tulum, then nothing. It would just suspend it over the airspace. Then the 80 rabbis came and said, Gazur agusha lisrof. If it touches the land, you have to burn it. Va'avira litlot. But if it was just over the land, airspace, then you just have to let it, get ruined by itself, and that's it. Gemara says, but this cannot be. Because ve'akati, but still, ve'usha gazur. You know where they actually decreed that if truma touched the land of the chutz la'aretz and had to be burned? That was done in Usha, and Usha was after the destruction of the second temple. It's when the Sanhedrin left Jerusalem and then went to Yavne, and after Yavne it went to Usha. So this is sometime after the destruction, and that's where the Sanhedrin was. So it happened way later. It happened way later. So when was it? The Tanan, and how we know what happened in Usha? The Tanan, al shisha svekot sorfin et teruma. We burn the teruma for 6 cases. Al shisha svekot, 6 doubtful cases. Al sefek bet haperas. We know there's a body there. We just don't know exactly where it is. So if truma went there into that field, it has to be burnt, even though we're not sure if it touched the body or not. And if you brought land, earth, a clod of earth from Chutz La'aretz into Eretz Yisrael, and it touched truma now, and we're not sure if that clod of earth was from Chutz La'aretz or not, the truma has to be burned. And if the truma touched clothing, and we're not sure if that clothing belongs to Hamaretz, burn the teruma. And we're not sure if the keli is tameh, and it touches the truma, it has to be burned. And if there's spittle, spit might be the spit of a zav, and a nida, or a mitzayra, so it's tameh. So if the truma touched that, you have to burn it, even though you're not sure if that's that spittle. Even though if there's urine next to animal urine, but you're not sure what human urine this is, maybe it's urine of a human who's tameh, safek tuma, you have to burn the teruma. However, all these cases, al vaday magan, that's all as if they definitely touch the teruma. Okay, then you have to burn it. Sofin, sofek tumutan, sofin and teruma. Right? Because otherwise, if we're not sure if it actually touched it, then you have 2 sfekot. I don't know if this is tameh, and I don't know if it touched it. So it's then it's going to be okay. However, here it's 1 sefek. I don't know if this is tameh. It might be. Then you have to burn the teruma. If you see Omer, al sefek ma'agan b'shut yachid sofin. Depends where. If it's in shut yachid, we always say sefek tuma b'shut yachid. We are more machmer. It's tameh there. So therefore, if I'm not sure if it touched, but it's in shut yachid, sorfin. No. B'shut yachid tolin. I'm not sure if it touched in shut yachid. You suspend it. You don't burn the teruma. You just let it stop, and it'll get ruined by itself. But shut rabim tolim. But if it did in shut rabim, if I'm not sure if it touched it in shut rabim, then it's going to be tahar. Amru Ula, and Ula said, "Elu shisha svekot v'usha hitkinu." So this gezerah that the tumas ha'amim, you have to burn the teruma if it touched it. That was done in Usha. So how can you tell me it was done by the Shmona Asar, the Shmonim Shana, 80 years for the destruction of rabbis? Elu atu inhu. So here comes the final answer. Gazur agusha litlot. When the Rabbi Yossi's came, they said, if it touched it, you just don't. If the truma touched the land of the goyim, you have to let the truma rot. You can't do anything with it. But if you just went over the airspace of Eretz Yisrael, nothing's wrong with the truma. You can eat it. It's tahor. Then came the Atura Banan, the Shmonim Shana. Then the rabbis of 80 years came and said, no, Gazur Idi. They said even the one that was suspended over the Eretz Ta'amim, there it was over the airspace. Both of them you have to let the teruma get rot and ruined. And then when they came to Usha, Gazur Agusha Lisrof. They touched it, they said you have to burn. They left it like the other rabbis, and they said it's just you can't eat it and you have to let it get room, but you don't have to burn it. So let's take a look at the halacha brought down by the Rambam. The Rambam says the first decree was regard to the soil of the land of the nations. The sages decreed that anything, person, or vessel that comes in contact with or carries that soil becomes impure for 7 days, like the impurity of one who comes in contact with a corpse. Water of purification offering must be sprinkled on him on the 3rd and 7th days of his impurity, and truma that he touches is burned. Afterwards, the sages issued an additional decree The one who enters the airspace of the land of nations is impure and is required to wait until sunset to purify himself. So the that enter the airspace is in abeyance, neither eaten nor burnt. So he brings down the final halacha that if it is touching, it has to be burnt, and if it is in the airspace, you have to let it get ruined on its own. For 6 cases of uncertain impurity, one burns it to Luma. 6 cases are the Beta Paras, the earth and the land of the nations, the clothes of the Amaretz, vessels that were found, saliva that was found, urine, even if it's mixed with animal urine. Although in all these cases, the impurity transmission is based on uncertainty, if the truma came in contact with the above items, it is burned. Where there's uncertainty whether or not it came in contact with one of these items, you're not allowed to eat it, but it is not burned. That's what the Rambam brings in Sefer Tahara. So just like we learned in the Sugya. Okay, so that's where we're up to. Okay, this is where we're getting up to for today. I know it was in depth and it was a lot, but Baruch Hashem, that is Masechet Shabbat. A few more lessons like this, and then we get back into actual Shabbat stuff. Okay. Yashikoah, Shavuot Tov,